The rain came down in sheets, turning the Manhattan streets into rivers of neon reflections. Sarah pressed herself against the cold brick wall of the alley, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Through the curtain of water, she could see him, Derek, her ex-boyfriend, stalking down the sidewalk with that predatory gait she'd once mistaken for confidence. 3 months. 3 months since she'd finally gathered the courage to leave, and he still wouldn't accept it was over. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text. Another threat disguised as concern. "I can see you, babe. Stop playing games." A cold finger of fear traced down her spine. Could he actually see her? Or was he bluffing again, the way he always did, making her question her own reality until she didn't trust her own instincts anymore? The restaurant across the street beckoned, like a lighthouse in a storm. Lumiere, one of those upscale places where Derek would never follow her inside. He hated fancy restaurants. Hated anywhere he couldn't make a scene without consequences. The kind of place where security actually meant something. Sarah made her decision in a heartbeat. She darted across the street, dodging a taxi that honked angrily, and pushed through the heavy glass doors of Lumiere. The warmth hit her immediately, along with the low murmur of conversation and the clink of expensive cutlery on fine china. She stood dripping on the marble floor, suddenly aware of how she must look. Soaked through, mascara probably running, her cheap jacket completely inadequate for the venue. "Miss, do you have a reservation?" The hostess approached with a polite but firm smile that said you don't belong here. "Aye." Sarah glanced back at the street. Derek stood on the opposite sidewalk, his eyes scanning the storefronts. Any second now, he'd look this way. "Please, I need to—" "Darling, there you are." The voice rolled over her like warm honey, deep and rich with an accent she couldn't quite place. European, maybe, old world in a way that made her think of castles and ancient bloodlines. A hand settled on her lower back, possessive and warm even through her wet jacket. Sarah turned and found herself looking up, way up, at the most striking man she'd ever seen. He stood at least 6'4", with shoulders that seemed to take up half the entrance. But it wasn't his size that made her breath catch. It was the way he carried himself, the absolute certainty in his presence, as if the very air around him bent to his will. His suit probably cost more than her rent, charcoal gray and perfectly tailored to his muscular frame. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic features, softened only by a meticulously groomed beard that framed full lips curved in a slight smile. But his eyes, God, his eyes. They were amber, not brown, not hazel, but genuine amber, like whiskey held up to firelight. And they were looking at her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. "I'm so sorry I'm late," he continued smoothly, his hand still on her back, guiding her forward. "Traffic was murder. You know how it is." Sarah's mind raced. This stranger was giving her an out, creating a fiction that would keep Derek at bay. She should be wary, should question his motives. But there was something in those amber eyes, a knowing, understanding, that made her play along. That's okay," she managed, hoping her voice didn't shake. The hostess's demeanor changed instantly. "Mr. Thorne, of course. Your usual table is ready. Please, right this way." Mr. Thorne. The name tickled something in Sarah's memory, but she couldn't place it. She let him guide her deeper into the restaurant, past elegant tables where beautiful people ate beautiful food, until they reached a corner booth that offered both privacy and a perfect view of the entrance. "Sit," he said, and it wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a suggestion either. Sarah slid into the booth, suddenly aware that she was leaving a wet spot on the expensive leather. He slid in next to her, not across from her, next to her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell his cologne, something woodsy and wild that shouldn't work with the refined setting, but somehow did. "Your ex?" he asked quietly, picking up a menu as if they'd done this 100 times before. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The one in the leather jacket, curtly crossing the street and trying to peer through the windows like some sort of discount stalker? Despite everything, Sarah felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat. "That's him. Charming." The word dripped with disdain. "And does this, Derek, is it Does he have any idea what you are? The question was so unexpected that Sarah turned to stare at him. What I am? I'm a graphic designer who works from home and probably eats too much Thai food. What do you mean? Later. His hand found hers under the table, and the touch sent a jolt of something electric up her arm. He's at the window. Smile at me like you're on the best day of your life. And maybe it was the adrenaline or the relief of not being alone, or something away the stranger's thumb traced circles on her palm. But Sarah found herself smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached her eyes and made her cheeks hurt. Something flickered in those amber eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something darker, more possessive. That's my girl, he murmured, and the praise shouldn't have sent warmth pooling in her belly, but it did. Through the window, she could see Derek's face contort with rage. He pressed closer to the glass, and for a moment, Sarah thought he might actually come inside. But then security, 2 large men in dark suits, appeared at the door, and Derek backed away, his phone already at his ear. He's calling me, Sarah whispered, feeling her phone vibrate in her pocket. Don't answer. It was definitely a command this time. In fact, give me your phone. What? No, Sarah. He said her name like he'd known it all along, and maybe he had. Maybe he'd heard the hostess say it, or maybe he'd guessed. But hearing it in that voice, dark and certain, made her hand move before her brain caught up. She pulled out her phone and placed it in his palm. His fingers closed around it, then around her hand, engulfing both. Block him, he said. Right now. Or better yet, let me do it. I can't just. He knows where I live, where I work. Not anymore. The absolute certainty in his voice should have frightened her, should have sent up red flags and warning bells. Instead, it felt like safety, like someone had finally built a wall between her and the chaos that had consumed the last year of her life. Why are you helping me? She asked. You don't even know me. Those amber eyes fixed on her again, and this time there was something ancient in them, something that made her think of forests at midnight and howling wind. Don't I? He lifted their joined hands and brushed his lips across her knuckles. The gesture should have been old-fashioned, ridiculous even. Instead, it felt like a brand. I know you're stronger than you think. I know you've been surviving when you should have been thriving. I know that bastard out there has been feeding off your light for too long, and I know, he paused, his jaw tightening. I know that you're about to discover you're meant for something more than this half-life you've been living. You're insane, Sarah breathed, but she didn't pull her hand away. Probably. His smile was sharp, predatory. But I'm also the only thing standing between you and him right now. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to have dinner. We're going to look like we're having the most enchanting evening of our lives. And your ex is going to watch from outside until he realizes he's lost. And then he's going to go home and cry into his cheap beer. And then we'll discuss the rest of your life. A waiter appeared, immaculate in black and white. Mr. Thorne, the usual? Please. And bring the lady whatever she'd like. Sarah realized she was still holding the menu without having looked at it. The prices didn't have dollar signs. Never a good indication for her budget. I can't afford. You're my guest. That tone again, the one that brooked no argument. Order whatever you want, Sarah. When was the last time you ate something that wasn't delivered in a paper bag? The question hit too close to home. Between the anxiety of Derek's constant harassment and her dwindling freelance income, she'd been living on ramen and coffee for weeks. The duck, she said, picking something at random, and maybe the salad to start. Excellent choice. The waiter departed, and Sarah was alone again with this stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger at all. I should at least know your name, she said. Your real name, not just what the hostess called you. Adrian Thorne. He said it like it should mean something. Though in certain circles, I'm known by other names. Certain circles? The kind you don't know exist yet. He shifted closer, and Sarah became acutely aware of the solid muscle of his thigh pressing against hers. Tell me, Sarah, do you believe in fate? I used to, she admitted, before I wasted 3 years on someone who... She cut herself off, not wanting to give Derek any more space in her head. Before you learn that humans can be monsters without ever transforming into anything else, Adrian finished. Yes, I imagine that would shake one's faith in destiny. There was that odd phrasing again. Transforming. What you are, as if he was speaking in code she was supposed to understand but didn't. Are you in therapy? She asked. Because this is some very intense first date conversation. He laughed, a sound that rumbled from deep in his chest. This isn't our first date, Sarah. This is the night your real life begins. But if it makes you feel better to call a date, then yes. We're on a date. The appetizer had arrived, her salad and something for Adrian that looked like carpaccio, raw and red. He ate like a predator, efficient and somehow elegant, while Sarah picked at her greens and tried to process what was happening. Derek was still outside. She could see him pacing. Phone pressed his ear. Part of her wanted to know who he was calling. The other part, the part that was growing stronger with every moment in Adrian's presence, didn't care anymore. You need to eat, Adrian said, his attention fixed on her barely touched salad. You're too thin. Has he been controlling your food? The question was so direct, so accurate, that Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. He said I should watch my figure, that I was getting soft. The growl that emanated from Adrian's chest was barely human. The sound vibrated through the booth, through her, raising goosebumps on her arms despite the restaurant's warmth. Sorry, he said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. I have very little patience for men who diminish women to make themselves feel larger. You don't seem like you need to make yourself feel larger, Sarah observed, taking in his considerable frame. You're already big. His smile was wicked. Yes, but size isn't everything. True power comes from here. He tapped his temple. And here. His hand moved to rest over his heart. A man who needs to control a woman's body is a man who has no control over himself. Sarah found herself eating, really eating, while Adrian watched with approval. The salad was incredible. Each leaf perfectly dressed, the kind of meal that made you remember food, could be pleasure, not just fuel or punishment. Better, Adrian murmured. Now, about your living situation. I have an apartment. It's small, but it's mine. And here's a key. It wasn't a question. Sarah's silence was answer enough. You can't go back there, Adrian said. Not tonight. Probably not ever. I can't just abandon my home. My things are replaceable. You are not. He turned to face her fully, and in the soft lighting of the restaurant, his eyes seemed to glow. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. I know this seems sudden. I know every instinct you have is probably screaming that you shouldn't trust me, that this is too fast, too strange. And you're right to be cautious. But I'm asking you to trust your other instincts, the ones you've been ignoring because he told you they were wrong. What do those instincts tell you about me? Sarah closed her eyes and let herself feel. The fear was there, yes, but underneath it was something else. Recognition, as if some deep part of her had been waiting for this man, this moment, this impossible intersection of chaos and certainty. They tell me you're dangerous, she said slowly, but not to me. Smart girl. His hand found hers again under the table. I am dangerous. Very. But never to you. Never to what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. The promise in those two words sent a shiver down her spine. But you will be. Once you understand what you are. What we are. Stop talking in riddles, Sarah demanded, surprising herself with her vehemence. If you have something to say, just say it. Adrian studied her for a long moment, as if weighing options. Finally, he leaned close enough that his breath stirred her hair. Have you ever noticed that you're different, Sarah? That you heal faster than you should? That you can sense things, moods, lies, danger, that others miss? That some nights, when the moon is full, you feel like your skin doesn't quite fit. Each question landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through her consciousness. Because yes, she had noticed all those things. And yes, Derek had convinced her she was being dramatic, hysterical, too sensitive. How did you? Because I'm like you, Adrian said. Only I know what I am, what we are, and that bastard out there. He's been drawn to your power without realizing what he was dealing with. He's been trying to possess something he could never understand, let alone control. The main course has arrived, interrupting the moment. Sarah's duck looked perfect, the skin crispy and golden, but she'd lost her appetite, her mind spinning with implications she didn't want to acknowledge. You think I'm what? A werewolf. The word felt ridiculous coming out of her mouth, even whispered. That's not real. That's not. Eat your duck, Adrian said calmly, cutting into his own steak. Rare enough that Red pulled on the plate. And I'll tell you a story. Maybe it was easier to listen while eating. Maybe the familiar action of knife and fork could ground her while her world tilted sideways. Sarah took a bite of duck. It melted on her tongue, rich and perfect, and waited. We've existed alongside humanity for thousands of years, Adrian began, his voice low enough that no other diners could hear. Hiding in plain sight. Most of us never know what we are. We live our lives thinking we're human, maybe a little different, maybe a little more intuitive, but fundamentally normal. Some of us have the gene but never manifest. Others only change during times of extreme stress or danger. This is insane, Sarah whispered, but she didn't stop him. Is it? Or does it explain things you've never been able to rationalize? The way dogs are either terrified of you or instantly devoted. The way you can navigate in complete darkness? The nightmares you have every full moon of running on four legs through forests you've never visited. Her fork clattered against the plate. She'd had those dreams since she was a child. Dreams so vivid that she'd wake up exhausted, her sheets tangled and damp with sweat, the taste of wild things in her mouth. How could you possibly know that? Because I've been looking for you. Adrian set down his own silverware and turned to her fully. For 3 years, I felt you out there. A member of my pack who didn't know she belonged to it. It's not common. Most of us are born into pack families, raised in a culture, taught what we are from childhood. But sometimes the gene skips generations. Sometimes a wolf is born to humans who have no idea what they created. Pack, Sarah repeated. You're saying you're the leader of a... I'm the alpha king of the East Coast Territory, Adrian said, and now there was steel in his voice. Every werewolf from Maine to Georgia answers to me. It's my job to protect them, to keep our existence secret, to maintain the balance between our world and the human one. And I'm supposed to believe I'm part of this? You don't have to believe anything right now. You just have to stay alive. His hand covered hers on the table. And this time the touch felt less like comfort and more like a claim. That human you were involved with, he's a problem. Not just for you, for all of us. He's been posting on certain forums, asking questions about his ex-girlfriend's weird abilities, documenting things he shouldn't have noticed, reaching out to people who shouldn't exist. Ice flooded Sarah's veins. What kind of forums? The kind that attract hunters. The word hung between them like a blade. There are humans who know we exist, Adrian continued. Most of them leave us alone. We have treaties, agreements, mutual non-interference. But there are always zealots. People who think we're monsters who need to be exterminated. And your ex, in his obsession with you, has drawn their attention. Sarah's mind raced back over every conversation with Derek. Every time he questioned her about her freaky intuition, her quick healing when she'd cut herself cooking. She'd thought he was gaslighting her, making her doubt her own perceptions. But what if he'd actually been documenting her differences, building a case against her without even understanding what he was seeing? I need to see my phone, she said urgently. I need to know what he's been saying. No, Adrian's grip tightened. What you need is to disappear. Tonight, completely. The pack will handle your apartment, your possessions, your digital footprint. But you can't go back to being Sarah, the freelance graphic designer who lives alone in Queens. That woman needs to vanish. You're talking about my life, my work, my friends. Do you have friends? The question was gentle but devastating. Real ones? Or did he isolate you so thoroughly that you can't remember the last time you had a genuine connection with another person? Sarah opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, because he was right. Derek had criticized every friendship, made her feel guilty for every social invitation she accepted without him. One by one, her friends had drifted away, exhausted by her cancellations and excuses. She'd told herself it was natural that couples became their own unit. But really, she'd been in a cage, and she'd been too close to see the bars. "I hate that you're right," she whispered. "I hate that I am too." Adrian lifted his hand and caught a passing waiter's attention with just a look. "Cancel the rest of the meal. We're leaving. Charge it to my account and add 30%. "Of course, Mr. Thorne." "Wait," Sarah protested. "I can't just leave with you. I don't even know you. You know I'm the only person telling you the truth. You know I'm offering you safety. And you know," his thumb traced her jawline, the touch sending electricity straight through her core. "You know that every cell in your body is telling you to trust me, to follow me, to let me protect you." It was true. God help her, it was all true. Every instinct she'd learned to suppress over the last 3 years was screaming at her to trust this strange, intense man who'd appeared out of nowhere. "If I go with you," she said slowly, "what happens then?" "Then I take you somewhere safe. Somewhere no one can find you. And we begin the process of helping you understand what you are, what you can be." His eyes burned into hers. "It won't be easy. Transformation never is. But I promise you this. You will never be powerless again. You will never be afraid again. You will never be anyone's victim again. And what do you get out of this?" His smile was pure predator. "I get you. A member of my pack. Return to where she belongs. And maybe," his hand moved to cup her face, "maybe something more, if fate is kind." "This is moving too fast," Sarah breathed, but she didn't pull away from his touch. "We've known each other for 3 years. Adrian said. "You just didn't know you knew me. Every full moon, your wolf has been calling out to mine. Every time you felt that restless ache, that need to run and hunt and be free, that was you reaching for your pack. For me, that's impossible." "Is it?" "Close your eyes, Sarah. Right now. Close them." She did, more to escape the intensity of his gaze than anything else. "Now breathe deep. Tell me what you smell." It was a strange request, but Sarah inhaled anyway, and suddenly the restaurant fell away. She smelled Adrian, cedar and smoke, and something wild and animal underneath his expensive cologne. She smelled the kitchen, duck fat and rosemary and fresh bread. She smelled the other diners, perfume and wine, and underneath it all, the salt copper musk scent of human sweat. And she smelled Derek outside, his fear and rage mixing into something acrid and toxic. Her eyes snapped open. "How am I doing that?" "Because you're waking up," Adrian said softly. "Your wolf is close to the surface now. She knows her alpha is near. She knows she's safe for the first time in your life." A howl split the air outside. Not human, not even close. Sarah's head whipped toward the window, where Derek stood with his head thrown back, making a sound that shouldn't come from a human throat. Other diners were looking now, muttering in confusion and alarm. "He's trying to challenge me," Adrian said, his voice gone cold and lethal. "The fool has no idea what he's doing." "What do you mean?" "He's calling me out. Pack law. He thinks you're his, and he's demanding I release you." Adrian stood in one fluid motion, pulling Sarah up with him, "which means I have to answer. And when I do, this is going to get very complicated very quickly." Security was already moving toward the door, but Adrian caught the nearest guard with a look. "Let him in, but clear the restaurant first. Tell them there's been a bomb threat. Get everyone out. Now." The guard hesitated for only a moment before speaking urgently into his radio. Immediately, waiters began circulating, voices calm but firm as they encouraged diners to leave their meals and exit through the kitchen. "Adrian, what are you doing?" Sarah demanded, her heart racing, giving him what he wants. Adrian's smile was terrible. "A challenge. A fight. His life against his claim on you. You can't be serious. We could just leave." "No." The word was absolute. "If I run from a human's challenge, it will make me look weak. Other wolves will question my authority. And in our world, Sarah, perception is everything. I rule because no one can defeat me. The moment I show weakness is the moment every ambitious alpha in my territory starts plotting my downfall. So you're going to kill him? The words came out small, horrified. I'm going to give him a chance to walk away, Adrian said. I'm going to explain to him that he stumbled into something beyond his comprehension, and that if he leaves now and never speaks of this again, he can keep his life. And if he doesn't walk away? Those amber eyes met hers, and in them she saw something ancient and ruthless. Then I removed the threat, permanently. The restaurant emptied quickly, staff moving with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, only Sarah, Adrian, and the security guards remained. And outside, Derek, who had stopped his awful howling and now stood with his hands pressed against the glass, his face twisted with an emotion Sarah couldn't name. "Last chance," Adrian said to her. "You can leave with the others. Go somewhere safe while I handle this. Or you can stay and watch what your alpha does to protect his pack." Sarah should have been terrified, should have been running for the exit along with everyone else. But something in her, something deep and primal, refused to leave. This was her fight, too. Her life. Her choice. "I'm staying," she said. Adrian's eyes flashed gold. "Then come here." She went to him, and he pulled her onto his lap, right there in the booth, positioning her so she faced a window. His arms came around her, solid and possessive. One hand splayed across her stomach, while the other rested on her thigh. "What are you doing?" "Showing him exactly who you belong to now," Adrian murmured against her neck, and then his teeth scraped her skin in a way that made her gasp. Not a bite, not quite, but a promise of one. A claim. "Let him in." Adrian called to the guards. They opened the door, and Derek stormed in, his face mottled with rage. He stopped when he saw them, saw Sarah sitting on Adrian's lap, saw the way she was curled into him like she belonged there. "Get off him," Derek snarled. "Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you? You ghost me for 3 months, and now you're whoring yourself out to some." The growl that came from Adrian's chest was no longer even remotely human. It reverberated through the restaurant, through Sarah, through everything, making the wine glasses shatter in their racks behind the bar. Derek stumbled back, fear finally showing on his face. "You will not speak to her like that," Adrian said, and his voice had changed too, gone deeper, more resonant. "You will not speak to her at all. You will stand there and you will listen, human, because I am going to explain to you exactly how close to death you're standing." "I don't know what kind of game you're playing," Derek said, but his voice shook. "But Sarah is my girlfriend." Ex-girlfriend. Sarah found her voice, surprised by its steadiness. "I left you, Derek. It's over. It's been over. Baby, he's brainwashing you or something. Look at you, sitting on his lap like some kind of pet." "She's sitting on her alpha's lap," Adrian interrupted, and there was no mistaking the possessiveness in his tone. "She's exactly where she belongs. What she never was yours. You're insane. Both of you are insane. Sarah, I'm calling the police." "Do it," Adrian challenged. "Call them. Tell them what? That your ex-girlfriend is having dinner with another man? That you've been stalking her for 3 months despite her clear request to leave her alone? Please make that call. I'd love to have this conversation with the authorities present." Derek's hand hovered over his phone, but he didn't pull it out, because he knew he was the one in the wrong here, had been all along. "You've been posting on forums," Adrian continued, his voice going colder, "talking about your ex-girlfriend's unusual abilities, trying to find explanations for things you should have never noticed in the first place. Do you have any idea what kind of attention you've drawn? What kind of danger you've put her in? I was just trying to figure out what was wrong with her." "Nothing is wrong with her." Adrian's arms tightened around Sarah. "She is perfect. She is exactly what she was meant to be. What's wrong is you, a small, pathetic human who sensed power and mistook it for something he could own." "Human?" Derek repeated, latching onto the word. "You keep saying it like you're not," he laughed, but it was edged with hysteria. "What? You think you're some kind of vampire or something? Some kind of monster?" "Not a vampire," Adrian said. "Look at her, Derek. Really look at her. See how she's not afraid of me even though every instinct you have is screaming that you should be running? See how she's relaxed in my arms when she used to flinch when you touched her? Do you know why that is?" Derek said nothing, just stared. "Because she recognizes her own kind." Adrian said softly, "Because her wolf knows mine. Because we are what we are, and you—" The contempt in his voice was withering. "You're nothing but prey that got too bold." And then he changed. It wasn't a full transformation, not like in the movies, all screaming and bone-breaking and horror. It was subtle. His eyes went from amber to pure gold, glowing in the dim light. His teeth lengthened just enough to be visible when he smiled. His hands, where they rested on Sarah, grew claws that pressed against her skin, not breaking it, but present, dangerous, real. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal and backed toward the door. "Run," Adrian suggested. His voice now layered with something that wasn't quite human. "Run fast and run far, and never speak of this again. Never speak her name again. Never think of her again. Because if you do, if you ever come near her, if you ever try to contact her, if you ever tell anyone about what you've seen tonight, I will find you, and I will show you what monsters really do to humans who threaten their pack." Derek ran. The door slammed behind him, and Sarah could hear his footsteps pounding on the pavement, getting farther away. She should have been terrified. She was sitting on the lap of something that wasn't human, something with claws and fangs and eyes that glowed. But all she felt was safe. Safer than she'd ever felt in her entire life. "Are you all right?" Adrian's voice was returning to normal, the claws retracting, the fangs shrinking. That was... Sarah couldn't find words. "Did that just happen?" "Yes." He turned her gently so she faced him. "And I'm sorry you had to see it this way. I wanted to ease you into it, let you discover your own nature gradually." But he forced my hand. "Your eyes are still glowing," she whispered. "Yes." He cupped her face in his hands. Human hands again, but she could still feel the potential for violence in them. "They do that when I'm close to my mate." The word hit her like lightning. "Mate!" "Wolves mate for life, Sarah. One person, one bond, forever. And from the moment I sent you 3 years ago, I knew you were mine. I just had to wait for you to be ready to know it too." "This is insane," she breathed. "All of this is insane." "Yes." His thumb traced her lower lip. "But it's your reality now. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, at this man who was apparently a werewolf and a king, and her destined mate, who had protected her from her ex, who had claimed her in front of everyone, who was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm going to kiss you." His sharp intake of breath was all the warning she had before his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything, claiming and giving at once, possessive but not controlling, passionate but not overwhelming. It tasted like power and safety and a future she'd never imagined. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "You have no idea what you've just done," he murmured. "Tell me." "You've accepted me, in front of witnesses." He gestured to security guards who were still standing by the door, carefully not looking their direction. "You acknowledge a bond. In wolf culture, that's as good as a marriage proposal and acceptance combined." "Wait, what?" "I didn't." "Too late." His smile was pure male satisfaction. "You're mine now. Officially. Irrevocably. Mine." She should have been angry. Should have felt trapped. Instead, she felt free for the first time in years. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I take you home. My home. To meet the pack. To begin your training." His hand slid down her sides, possessive and sure. "To start your new life. And if I'm not ready, then we go slow." He kissed her again, softer this time. "But you sleep in my bed, under my protection, surrounded by pack. Because you're mine, Sarah, and I take care of what's mine." She should have protested, should have demanded her independence, her space, her time to think. But sitting there on his lap, surrounded by his strength and his certainty and his absolute conviction that she belonged to him, she found she didn't want to. "Take me home," she whispered. "Take me home, Alpha." The sound he made was pure satisfaction. He stood, lifting her with him as if she weighed nothing, and carried her toward the door. The security guards fell into step behind them, and Sarah realized they were packed too, wolves in human form, protecting their king and their new queen. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets gleamed with moisture, reflecting the lights of the city. A black SUV waited at the curb, sleek and expensive, with tinted windows that promised privacy. Adrian settled her into the back seat before sliding in beside her. The door closed with a solid thunk that seemed to seal her off from her old life. The driver, another wolf, she realized, catching his eyes in the rearview mirror, pulled smoothly into traffic. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked, suddenly aware of how much she just trusted this man, this stranger who claimed to be her mate. "My estate. It's about an hour outside the city." His hand found hers again, that constant need to touch her, to maintain contact. "Private land. Secure. The pack house is there. That's where the Central Pack lives. My inner circle, my most trusted wolves. You'll be safe there while we figure out the rest. The rest being my entire life. The rest being how to keep you alive long enough to claim your power." His expression darkened. "Your ex wasn't wrong to notice your abilities. You're manifesting without training, without guidance. That's dangerous. You could shift accidentally during the full moon, or worse, during a moment of high emotion. And if that happens in public, bad things happen," Sarah finished. She was starting to understand the scope of what he'd been protecting her from. "The hunters you mentioned, they'd come for me. They'd come for all of us. One exposed wolf puts the entire species at risk." He turned to face her more fully. "That's why we have laws. Rules about exposure, about mating with humans, about training new wolves. Your situation is unusual. A dormant wolf awakened late with no pack support. But it's not unheard of. We'll manage it." "You sound very confident." "I've been Alpha King for 15 years, Sarah. I've handled worse crises than one beautiful woman who doesn't know her own strength yet." His smile was soft now, almost tender. "Though I'll admit, none of those crises made my heart race quite like you do." The admission surprised her. He seemed so controlled, so certain of everything. The idea that she could affect him, could make this powerful man uncertain, was intoxicating. "What happens if I can't do it?" she asked quietly. "What if I can't learn to control this? What if I'm not actually a wolf, and this is all some elaborate delusion?" "It's not a delusion." He pulled her hand to his chest, pressing her palm against his heart. "Feel that? That's recognition. My wolf knows yours, even if you can't feel her yet. And as for learning control, you will, because failure is an option, and I don't accept anything less than success from my pack." "That sounds intense." "I am intense. I'm territorial, possessive, and I have very little patience for disobedience." His eyes held hers. "I'm also fair, protective to a fault, and I would burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you. You need to decide if you can handle that, Sarah, because once we reach the estate, once you're inside pack lands, the bond will strengthen. Leaving will become exponentially harder. Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Mate bonds are powerful things. Right now, you feel drawn to me, probably confused by how much you trust me despite logic saying you shouldn't. That's the beginning of the bond. But once it's fully established, once your wolf recognizes mine completely, it will feel like gravity. Like trying to leave would be like trying to stop breathing." Sarah swallowed hard. "And you feel this too?" "I've felt it for 3 years." The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. 3 years of knowing you were out there, knowing you were mine, unable to claim you because you weren't ready. Watching from a distance as that human touched you, hurt you, diminished you. His jaw clenched. "Do you have any idea what kind of control it took not to rip him apart the first time he made you cry?" "You were watching me?" "Protecting you," he corrected. "There's a difference. I never invaded your privacy, never interfered with your choices. But I made damn sure nothing supernatural touched you. Made sure no other wolves tried to claim you before you knew what you were. Made sure that when your awakening finally came, I'd be there to guide you through it." It should have felt creepy, this admission of long-distance surveillance. Instead, it felt like devotion, like someone had finally cared enough to make sure she was safe, even when she didn't know she needed protecting. The city gave way to suburbs, then to darker roads lined with trees. Sarah watched the landscape change through the window, each mile taking her further from the life she'd known. She should have been scared. Should have been demanding he'd turn around, take her back, let her think about this. But she didn't want to think. She'd spent 3 years thinking herself into a prison with Derek. For once, she wanted to just feel. And what she felt, sitting next to Adrian in the warm darkness of the car, was right. "Tell me about the pack," she said. "What should I expect?" "Curiosity, maybe some jealousy. You're unmated, and I'm the Alpha King. There are plenty of female wolves who've been angling for the position of queen." His smile was sharp. "They're going to be very disappointed to learn the position has been filled. I haven't agreed to be anyone's queen. You kissed me in front of witnesses. In wolf culture, you absolutely agreed." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "But if you need more convincing, I'm happy to provide it." Repeatedly, in great detail. Heat flooded through her, pooling low in her belly. "You're very sure of yourself." "I'm sure of us." His hand slid up her thigh, possessive but not presumptuous, stopping well short of anywhere inappropriate. "I'm sure that you feel this pull between us, this rightness. I'm sure that every instinct you have is telling you to trust me. And I'm sure that by morning, you're going to wonder how you ever live without this, without us, without your pack. Morning seems very far away. It is. We have all night to get you settled, to introduce you to your new family, to start teaching you what you are." His eyes glowed again in the darkness. "And to make absolutely certain you understand that you're never going back to that half-life you were living. You're mine now, Sarah, my mate, my queen, my wolf." The SUV turned onto a long driveway, passing between stone pillars topped with what looked like wolf statues. Trees closing on either side, old-growth forest that seemed to press against a vehicle with ancient patience. "We're here," Adrian said unnecessarily. The driveway opened onto a clearing, and Sarah's breath caught. The estate spread before them like something from a fairy tale, or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. The main house was enormous, a sprawling manor of stone and timber that looked like it had grown from the forest itself. Lights glowed in windows, warm and inviting. To one side, she could see what looked like smaller cottages, and beyond that, deeper in the trees, the suggestion of more buildings. "This is all yours." "Ours," he corrected. "Pack lands. 500 acres of private forest. The main house is where I live, where my inner circle stays. The cottages are for mated pairs who want more privacy. And deeper in the woods, there are cabins for wolves who prefer solitude." He pointed toward the tree line. "And beyond that, wild lands where we can run without fear of discovery." The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Adrian climbed out first, then turned and lifted her down, his hands on her waist, steadying her. The moment her feet touched the ground, Sarah felt it, a thrumming energy in the earth itself, ancient and powerful. "You feel it," Adrian said, watching her face. "The pack lands. They're warded, protected by magic as old as our species. Nothing can find you here unless we allow it. Magic is real too. Magic, werewolves, vampires, witches." He ticked them off on his fingers. "The supernatural world is vast. Sarah, humans live in the shallow end of the pool, unaware of the depths beneath them. Welcome to the deep end." The front doors opened, and people emerged. No, not people. Wolves in human form. Sarah could sense it now, that subtle difference Adrian had mentioned. They moved with predator's grace, watched with eyes that caught the light strangely, radiated power in a way humans simply didn't. "Alpha." A woman approached, tall and elegant, with silver blonde hair despite, looking no older than 30. "We felt you approach. And you brought—" Her eyes landed on Sarah, and something flickered across her face. "Surprise? Displeasure? A guess." "Not a guess, Elena." Adrian's arm wrapped around Sarah's waist, pulling her against his side. "This is Sarah, my mate, your queen." The silence that fell was absolute. Every wolf in the clearing went still, their attention fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made her want to hide. But Adrian's presence at her side kept her standing tall. Your mate, Elena repeated slowly. Alpha, with all due respect, she doesn't smell like Pack. She smells like a dormant wolf who's about to awaken, Adrian interrupted. Which is why we need to prepare the transformation room and gather the elders. She'll need guidance through her first shift. Her first shift. Elena's gaze sharpened on Sarah. How old are you? 28, Sarah answered, finding her voice. 28 and never shifted. That's... Elena looked at Adrian. That's dangerous, Alpha. She could die. The first shift is traumatic enough for adolescents who've been prepared their whole lives. An adult, unprepared, without pack bonds to anchor her. Which is why I need the elders, Adrian said, his voice hard. And why I need my pack to support their queen, not question my choices. Elena bowed her head immediately. Of course, Alpha. Forgive me. I only worry. I know what you worry about. His voice softened slightly. And your concerns are valid. But Sarah is stronger than you think. She survived 28 years alone, unguided, and still maintained control. That takes incredible strength. She'll make it through this. If you say so, Alpha. But Elena's eyes on Sarah were still doubtful. Other wolves approached now, introducing themselves in a blur of names Sarah couldn't track. Marcus, the Beta, Adrian's second in command, a massive man with kind eyes. Jade, who handled pack security. Thomas, who managed their business interests. Lila, who taught the young wolves. On and on, until Sarah's head spun with information. Through it all, Adrian kept her close, his hand never leaving her waist, his presence a constant anchor. And slowly, Sarah began to relax. These were her people now. Her pack. Strange as it seemed, she was home. That's enough for tonight, Adrian finally announced. My mate is exhausted, and she's been through an ordeal. We'll do formal introductions tomorrow. For now, he looked at Elena. Is the Queen's suite prepared? The Queen's! Elena's eyes widened. Alpha, we haven't used those rooms in decades. Not since your mother. Then it's time they were occupied again. His tone brooked no argument. Have them prepared within the hour. Fresh linens, flowers, whatever makes them welcoming. And send someone with appropriate clothing. Sarah sighs. His eyes raked over her appreciatively. Have Lila guess. She's good at that. Yes, Alpha. Elena bowed and retreated, taking several wolves with her. Adrian guided Sarah toward the house, up wide stone steps and through doors that must have been 10 feet tall. The interior was as impressive as the exterior. Soaring ceilings with exposed beams, a massive fireplace where logs crackled, furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. This is beautiful, Sarah breathed. It's been in my family for 200 years, Adrian said. Each generation adds to it, changes it, makes it their own. Now it's yours to shape as well. He led her deeper into the house, past wolves who stopped and stared, up a grand staircase, down a hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking people with amber eyes. Finally, he stopped at a door at the end of the hall. This is my suite, he said. The Queen's rooms connect to it. There's a shared sitting room between them. You can stay in your own space as much as you need. But tonight, his eyes met hers. Tonight, I need you close. I need to know you're safe, that you're real, that you're actually here after 3 years of waiting. The vulnerability in his voice undid her. Sarah rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and sure. I'm here, she whispered against his lips. I'm not going anywhere. His response was a growl that vibrated through her chest. He swept her into his arms and carried her through the door, kicking it closed behind them. The suite was magnificent. A sitting area with leather furniture, a bedroom beyond, a bed large enough to sleep 4 people, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the forest. But Sarah barely registered any of it, because Adrian was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I should let you rest, he said, but he didn't put her down. I should be patient, give you time to adjust. Or, Sarah interrupted, you could kiss me again. He did. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, like he'd been starving and she was sustenance, like he'd been lost and she was home. His hands mapped her body over her clothes, reverent and hungry at once. "We should stop," he growled against her neck. "You're not ready." "I'm ready for this," Sarah insisted. "I'm ready for you." "Not tonight." He pulled back with visible effort, his eyes glowing gold. "Tonight you need rest, and I need to maintain control. When I claim you properly, I want you fully aware of what you're accepting. I want you to understand the bond, to choose it consciously, not because you're overwhelmed and vulnerable." She wanted to argue, but the truth was she was exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and drained. "Tomorrow," she asked, "tomorrow we start your training. We begin teaching you to shift, to control your wolf, to understand what you are." He carried her to bed and laid her down gently. "But also tomorrow, yes, if you still want me, once you understand what it means, then I'll claim you so thoroughly you'll never doubt who you belong to." "I already don't doubt that," Sarah murmured, her eyes drifting closed. She felt him remove her shoes, felt him pull a blanket over her, felt his lips brush her forehead. "Sleep, my mate," he whispered. "When you wake, your new life begins." And surrounded by a scent, by the safety of packed lands, by the certainty that she was finally where she belonged, Sarah slept more deeply than she had in years. She dreamed of running through forests under a full moon, of hunting with a pack of wolves who welcomed her as one of their own. And in the dream, the largest wolf, black as midnight with eyes of molten gold, ran at her side, claiming her, protecting her, loving her with an intensity that transcended human understanding. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the windows, and she could hear voices downstairs, the pack gathering, waiting to meet their new queen. Sarah took a deep breath and smiled. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them prepare. Because she was done being afraid. Done being small. Done living a half-life in the shadows. She was a wolf. She was a queen. She was Adrian's mate. And her real life was just beginning.